Hey, everybody, check this out. Well, first of all, I want to say welcome to our Sunday night, 4 o'clock on the west coast of the United States, 7 o'clock on the east coast, or wherever you are in the world. Thank you for joining us. In fact, right now, I'm on a ship, and if it looks like I'm getting a little bit wobbly, because let me tell you, these are some rough seas. We're making our way. We're almost back from Alaska with the conference up here. And I've been doing my best to keep you updated all week. Hey, listen, make sure that you join me Monday through Thursday as I have the daily news updates, Today in Prophecy. We also have the Tom Hughes Report on Wednesdays. And well, we have a lot going on. So I'm doing a prophecy update for y'all tonight. As we all know, everything is just getting unbelievable. But we're going to start right here. Check this out. It was one of my news clips from this week. And this is kind of where we're going to center our entire time on here right now. It is what is happening with the threats that are coming to us all. This is out of the UK. If you've been watching what's happened in the UK, there's riots, there's civil unrest, and the UK government is cracking down. They're becoming just like China. Douglas Murray warns is coming here to the United States. They're arresting you for what they deem hate speech because you are not going along with their narrative. You're pushing back. You're calling out the lies. You're saying, wait a minute, you guys are a bunch of liars. So watch what this cop says, this top cop says. Watch what he says. He wants to, as far as he can see, Elon Musk should be arrested. Anybody who opposes the government or says anything unkind or speaks the truth should be arrested. If you're an American, get this, he wants to have you extradited from America if you say something unkind. This is unbelievable. What they determine is hate speech. Unbelievable. Wants to have you extradited from America and arrested there in the UK. Kind of makes you wonder if you're traveling to the UK and you have online ministry like we do, what's going to happen. Check out this short video. I'm going to come back in a minute because this is what we're going to focus our time on.
We will throw the full force of the law at people. And whether you're in this country committing crimes on the streets or committing crimes from further afield online, we will come after you.
Talk to me about that, because we have seen some high-profile figures whipping up the hatred. You talked about it in there with the officers, in fact, about this being added to by online commentary. I mean, I'm even thinking of the likes of Elon Musk getting involved. What are you considering when it comes to dealing with people who are whipping up this kind of behaviour from behind a keyboard, maybe in a different country?
Being a keyboard warrior does not make you safe from the law. You can be guilty of offences of incitement, of stirring up racial hatred. There are numerous terrorist offences regarding the sort of publishing of material. All of those offences are in play if people are provoking hatred and violence on the streets, and we will come after those individuals just as we will physically confront on the streets the thugs and the obs who are causing the problems for communities.
All right. So, I mean, you look at that. I want you to think of this. The words of H.G. Wells, the radical globalist from 100 years ago. He said, many people will die. He was talking about the vision that he had for a new world order, which he loved. And he said, many people will die protesting against it because these people know it's evil. And so we can see the world that we are living in. George Orwell warned in his 1984 book called 1984, he warned that the time is coming when telling the truth will become a revolutionary act. This is what we are watching. All right, let's work through a couple of things. We're going to be looking at this in detail. And again, I'm on a boat, so if I seem wobbly, you want to know something? It is because I am wobbly. All right, Daniel chapter 7 says this. Daniel has this vision of 4 different beasts. We come to the 4th beast. And Daniel says, after this, I saw in the night visions, and behold, a 4th beast, dreadful and terrible, exceedingly strong, and had huge iron teeth. It was devouring, breaking in pieces, trampling the residue with its feet. It was different from all the beasts that were before it, and it had 10 horns. All right, what Daniel sees is the 4th beast is the Roman Empire. However, in that one verse alone, he sees it reviving into what we know as the revived Roman Empire. It starts off with the 4th beast of the Roman Empire, then suddenly it's going to have 10 horns. We know from Revelation chapter 17, that is still in the future. It's this 10-horned beast representing 10 kings. Daniel talks about that here. We are watching the development of this. It's the beast system of Antichrist. And I'm going to tell you something. Satan and Antichrist aren't going to waste a second building the infrastructure. That's why what's happening in the UK, what John has told me, Prescott has told me, has been happening over in Australia. We start hearing these things, and I mean, imagine if someone like Kamala Harris is president here in the U.S. They're coming after us, every single one of us. All right, he continues. I saw the fourth beast. It was dreadful, had huge iron teeth. It was the leader of the UN who said several years ago, he said, what we need is multilateralism with teeth. In other words, we got to lock everybody down. We got to control the masses. So again, watch what's going on in the UK. Okay, moving from there, this beast had 10 horns. I was considering the horns, and there was another horn, a little one, coming up among them, before whom 3 of the first horns were plucked out by the roots. And there in this horn were the eyes like the eyes of a man, and a mouth speaking pompous words. So what Daniel sees right there, and we're not going to get all the way into Daniel chapter 7 right now, but what he sees again is this coming empire that's going to control the masses, huge iron teeth, controlling and just marching and crushing and devastating everything in its power. We know from Revelation chapter 6, when you see the rider on the white horse, what is it? It goes about conquering and to conquer. It doesn't use bullets to kill you. What it does is it uses rules and regulations to control the masses. The rider on the white horse, Daniel chapter 7 that we just read, this coming empire. All right, but there's more. Check this out. All of these things are developing. Micah chapter 2 wrote this. God is giving Micah the vision for Israel in ancient Israel, but we also understand that the prophecy is patterned. So what happened before is happening again. We see it developing. Listen to this, Micah chapter 2, beginning of verse 1. Woe to those who devise iniquity and work out evil in their beds. Think of that. At the morning light they practice their evil because it is in the power of their hand. So in other words, they sit there and go, how can we control the people? How can we take what they got? How are we going to get all the power for ourselves? How are we going to conquer? They lay it embedded, and I'm thinking about these things, like the cop that you just saw in the video. This top cop, I'm going to control these people. We're going to call it hate speech because it is in the power of their hands. These globalists, we see it at the tops, and we see it even at the rank and file with someone like this guy in UK. Okay, this is what they do. They covet fields, and they take them by violence. They just take the field. They're going to steal what the people own. Think of what's happening to the farmland around the world. I mean, you start to look at this and go, you can't make this up. Also, houses, they take and they seize them, and they oppress a man and the man's inheritance. In other words, they take everything, including what the father was going to leave behind for the family, for his kids. They take it all. Folks, we see this type of thing developing. Let's work through this because it's challenging. So we got to have our right biblical head on this, all right? So think of this. Rome never fell. Right? It became a church. The British Empire never stopped. It became a bank. These things have just changed and morphed into other things. As we work through different things, we know the powers that be, one new world order. We can look back in the past several years. You have George Bush, you have both George Bushes, you have the Clintons, you have the Obamas. You can go back further. You got the Rockefellers, you got the Rothschilds, and you got all of these different players. You have the Henry Kissinger's, Trilateral Commission, the World Health Organization. We have all of these different dynamics, and all of these different things are happening. But let's go through what their intentions are. So for some of you, you may be familiar with William or Bill Cooper. He wrote the book called The Pale Horse, not the same as the Bible regarding the pale horse. It's very interesting to read about it. But he writes about this. He says, in May of 1954, the Third World War actually began. And he talks about it. He says you can find it in a document from 1979 called Silent Weapons for Quiet Wars. He writes, the Third World War is called the Quiet War. The quiet war on the masses of the citizens. This is why we see these things developing. This is why we experience the last 5 years of things that we have, and again, the UK. So the Third World War is called the Quiet War. It lays out, get this, the plan for social engineering and the automation of society via silent weapons on a national and global scale. Silent weapons, information, technology, economy, other things, right? So think about conquering and to conquer without using weapons. Daniel chapter 7 with this beast with iron teeth, all of these different things. This document discusses social control, destruction of human life, those that are unfit to live in the plan that they have. And to quote from it, the need to be sure that the information is secured from public scrutiny. In other words, why do you think that there's so much censoring going on? Why do you think this gets shut down? Why do you think that gets shut down? Listen, think of this for just a second. Check this out. Tulsi Gabbard, from here in the U.S., she was a Democrat, then now she's an independent. And from everything I understand, what she did is she ratted out some things on the Biden administration. Well, it's been leaked through a whistleblower that she's now on the TSA's watch list as a terrorist, a domestic terrorist. Tulsi Gabbard, it's this type of thing, we will come after you. But they want to keep these things from public scrutiny. So we have these types of leaked things that are coming out, whistleblowers, that sort, right? Continues. It states, it must be understood that a state of domestic warfare exists between said person or group of persons and the public. Did you get that? A domestic warfare exists between the people at top and the public. The solution of today's problems requires an approach which is ruthlessly candid, with no agonizing, get this, over religious, moral, or cultural values. In other words, don't bring your religion into it. Don't bring your culture into it. You will do what we say or we're going to arrest you. This is what we are watching. He says it began back in 1954, officially had its beginning back in 1954. For a particular new recruit, it continues. You have qualified for this project because of your ability to look at human society with cold objectivity and yet analyze and discuss your observations and conclusions with others of similar intellectual capacity. These people are evil. I mean, even when you look at the commercial industry, for example, you remember that old commercial for Coca-Cola, if you're as old as me, from way back. You got to go back to the late 60s, early 70s is where I believe it came from, early 70s. I'd like to teach the world to sing in perfect harmony. And it shows all these different people from all over the world singing about unity under the selling of Coca-Cola. Remember that? So this has been going on, and the mindset has been there. That song, I think it was from the 80s, "We are the world, we are God's children." Remember that one? Is this type of thinking that has been manipulating and brewing in the masses of the people for a long time. Okay, but continue from there. What we are looking at is far worse than almost anybody has speculated. Think of it this way. We have a World Bank, we have a World Court, World Economic Forum, World Health Organization, United Nations, Global Constitution, an attempt at one, an attempt at global currency, global income tax, global military power, global identification number, global religion. So all of this is the attempt to get all of those things with these other things that are already in place. Okay, with that, let's work through this even more because there's a lot going on here. They have a problem. In 1948, with the creation of the transistor by William Shockley, those in position of power like the Rockefellers understood that with technology and enough money, it was possible for them to control the whole world with a push of the button. Hence, the Rockefeller Foundation funded a 4-year grant to The Harvard Economic Research Project. A year later, in 1949, U.S. military got involved, specifically the U.S. Air Force, and the economy, water shortages, pestilences, etc., are military campaigns against the people. You know, you look at this and you think, again, silent weapons for quiet wars. So much going on. So many of you already know this quote by Rothschilds. This is Maya Rothschilds. Give me control over a nation's currency and I care who not makes its laws. In other words, I will control everything that there is going on out there. Again, we go back to the beginning. What happened in Rome, Great Britain never fell, it became a bank. In Rome, it never collapsed, it became a church. So you start looking at this, you're going, there are people that are at the top of all of this. What Rothschilds had discovered was the basic principle: power of influence and control over people is applied to economics. The principle is this: when you assume the appearance of power, people soon give it to you. So without needing to name any Rothschilds directly, this was the Harvard Economic Research Project's purpose: to discover the science of controlling the economy. At first, the American economy and then the world economy. Hence, you've got to control it. So we have the petrodollar, it's infecting everything. Everything is infected. When the dollar crashes, listen, we've been watching this over the last week, right? What's going on with the dollar? Everything. I mean, watch what's going on in China. It affects everything. So what is it? It's at first the American economy, then the world economy, because ultimately this is going to a global economy. But the thing that the video we saw in the very beginning, it is totally related to this silent weapons for quiet wars and everything for the rest of our time here. Give me a few more minutes. Its immediate aim, the Harvard Economic Research Project, was to determine what forces change economic structure, how the behavior of the structure can be predicted, and how it can be manipulated. You get that? Change economic structure, how the behavior can be predicted and manipulated. Remember Larry Fink? Famous video, it's been all over the internet, where he says we must change people's behavior. Behavior modification. They discovered that an economy obeyed laws the way electricity obeys laws, the way gravity obeys laws. The economy also obeys laws, so change the behavior. They can have a particular area that is raised up. They want to depress an area. They want to keep these people poor. They want to make these people rich. They can do all of those different things. They know exactly what money will do. They know what makes it go up, and they know what makes a society collapse. They know exactly how to manipulate people and nations and wars, when wars begin, when they end, and who wins. So what we are witnessing, listen, is not by accident. The economy, the pestilences, what's happening in the UK, what's happening with good old Kamala and whatever, all these different things going on with the Biden administration, or whatever's happened with the Biden administration, all these different dynamics going on. Witnessing all of them. All right, I'm going to read another passage to you. Most important, let me go back to my pulpit on the boat, on the ship here. Okay, check this out. Understand this, and it all starts to come together, but we're not done yet. We are not done yet, because this, I'm telling you right now, folks, we are witnessing these things. Unbelievable. Matthew chapter 12, listen to this. Jesus knew their thoughts. This is the thoughts of the Pharisees and the scribes, and they were accusing him of casting out demons by Beelzebub. Jesus is like, no, that's pretty absurd. You can't do that. And then he says this. He knew their thoughts, and he said to them, every kingdom divided against itself is brought to desolation. Every city or house divided against itself cannot stand, right? You can't have a kingdom that's divided. What's happened is, if you look at the Western world, absolutely divided. Look what's going on over in the UK. Look what's going on all over Europe. Look what's happening now in Australia and here in America. Divided, right? Divided. Oh, by the way, I don't have time to get too much into this. Just going to throw this out there. Maybe another update coming up. Do you know Hitler only had 10% of the people behind him? And he's able to manipulate the entire masses? And look at the world war that was caused. Only 10% of the people. Listen, 30% of the people go along with whatever they are told, whether Facebook tells them or the government tells them. Don't be a stupid part of the 30%. 65% of the people go along with it because, well, even though they know it's wrong, they don't want to upset they will still want to get a paycheck. They want everything to, let's just keep the peace, right? Only 5% of the people are willing to push back. But Hitler manipulated everything, only having 10%. Jesus says a house divided against itself cannot stand. We look at the Western world is divided, and it is radical. And like that cop, that top cop that we saw in the very beginning, what a radical, evil man he is, but just doing the work of his father, Satan. Okay, moving on from there. Jesus also said in Matthew chapter 12, so house divided cannot stand. Then in verse 29, how can you enter a strong man's house and plunder his goods unless you first bind the strong man, and then he will plunder his house? This is, folks, this is exactly what Satan is doing. He has divided, and now he's binding the strong man. In this case, America is the strongest man. But you look at the whole Western world being bound by everything that we see going on here. I believe here's why we see this happening, because Antichrist is going to rise out of the Western world. So we are seeing the Western world divided, we are seeing it conquered, we are seeing it bound, and then out of the chaos, out of the mess, out of the silent weapons for quiet wars, arresting and threatening to arrest, out of the mess, out of the lawlessness, out of all of the things they are doing, is going to rise Antichrist. This is why this is happening in the Western world. Listen, quite frankly, there's no way Russia, China, Islamic countries will allow any of these things to happen. Any of these things like the wokeness, the gender madness, that kind of thing, the rise in LGBTQ, they wouldn't put up with that stuff. But they will do the control thing, like China. That's what's happening, because they still got to control the masses. But the wokeness is creating all the chaos and the lawlessness. Okay, moving on from there, think of this, okay? Most of you are familiar with the Club of Rome. It was invented in 1968, not to be confused with the Treaty of Rome, which I believe was from 1958. But listen to this. The Club of Rome, it was an environmentalist think tank and consultant group to the UN. In 1972, it released The Limits to Growth, a book on the dangers of overpopulation. According to the club's official website, 12 million copies were distributed in 37 languages. In 1989, Ronald Bailey, science editor of Forbes magazine, looked back on the book and laughed. He said it was as wrong-headed as it was possible, could you possibly be. Limits to Growth predicted that at 1972 rates of growth, the world would run out of gold by 1981, mercury by 1985, tin by 1987, zinc by 1990, petroleum by 1992, copper, lead, and natural gas by 1993. All right. Now, what does this have to do with what we're talking about? Everything. Everything. During the years immediately after the book's release, it was a roaring success. It changed the world's conversation on matters of population and the environment, even though it's all lies. Later, when the predictions started falling apart, the Club of Rome tried to say they were not really predictions at all. They said the book was simply laying out possible scenarios. And you have people who found, we have all of these climate laws based upon these lies. Okay, the book predicted a grim 20th century for Earth. It starts with a quotation from Secretary General of the UN from 1961 to 1971. Here's a quote. "I do not wish to seem overdramatic," Youthant said, "but I can only conclude from the information that is available to me as Secretary General that the members of the UN have perhaps 10 years left in which to subordinate their ancient quarrels and launch a global partnership to curb the arms race, to improve the human environment, to diffuse the population explosion." Did you get all this? "And to supply the required momentum to development efforts. If such a global partnership is not forged within the next decade," so you got 10 years, then I very much fear that the problems I have mentioned will have reached such staggering proportions that they will be beyond our capacity to control. You can't read that quote at the beginning of a book and think of its warnings are a 50 or 100 years later. In 1969, he said within the next decade, within 10 years, it's game over. That would have been 1979. Telling you, these people are all liars. Okay, I can't say too much about this yet, but over in the UK, because of how I got the information, but over in the UK, they're going after people for saying things like I just said, that these climate things are not true, that they are lies. That's one of the things they consider hate speech. You're out to destroy the planet if you don't go along with it, the climate lies. Silent weapons for quiet wars. That is what is happening. Okay, in 1991, the Club of Rome published a book titled The First Global Revolution. In searching, this is a quote, in searching for a common enemy against whom we can unite, we came up with the idea that pollution, the threat of global warming, water shortages, famine, and the like would fit the bill. Silent weapons for quiet wars on the masses of humanity. Daniel chapter 7, Micah chapter 2, Matthew chapter 12, Revelation chapter 6. You start putting all of these things together. And then in the Club of Rome's book, okay, after they said, we came up with the idea. Hey, we have an idea. Pollution, global warming, the threat of water shortages, famine, this kind of stuff, pestilences, they're exactly what we need. Therefore, because of those things, humanity then is the enemy. All these dangers are caused by human intervention and natural processes, and it's only through changed behavior they can be overcome. So therefore, the real enemy is humanity. That is a quote directly from their book. Check it out, 1991. Get your own copy. The Club of Rome, The First Global Revolution. Wow. Wow, wow, wow. And we think Romans chapter 1, God said they will worship the creation rather than the creator. In other words, they will follow their God, this earth, and be able to be manipulated because they're going to bow down to this God. It was Prince Charles, who's now King Charles, said this at the COP26 meeting 2021. Climate change and biodiversity loss pose an existential threat to the extent we have to put ourselves on what might be called a war-like footing. Did you get that? Silent weapons for quiet wars. Daniel chapter 7, Revelation chapter 6, the rider on the white horse. I mean, you start putting all of these things together, you're going, man, I don't know for sure when the rider on the white horse will officially make the appearance, bringing in this false sense of peace and security, but I suspect it's going to be through silent weapons with quiet wars, for quiet wars, to bring about this war on humanity, not a weapon being fired, not a bullet being fired, but being able to control the masses of the people. That is what we see going on in the UK. What do? They know. You create the crisis, you control the outcome, you sell the solution. Folks, that is what is happening right here. Pay attention to what in the world is going on. I have a lot more to say about this. Listen, join me Monday through Friday this week. I'm doing my daily news. Monday through Thursday this week, I'm doing my daily news today in prophecy every day, keeping you updated. Tom Hughes Report is on Wednesdays. You Can't Make This Up is on Thursdays, plus anything else in between. Join me for Sunday mornings. Thank you for joining me for this. I'll continue to keep you guys updated. By the way, I'm going to be in North Carolina this coming week. Really appreciate your prayers for that. I have a chance to speak there. You can check out that information if you're in the area on the website, hopefortimes.com. Hey, by the way, I know we have our big conference coming up in November in Southern California, but Brandon Holdhouse, listen, register for his conference. Check it out. Go to his website. You can check out the link in the download or the description and download. Go to his website. Register for his conference coming up September 6th and 7th. It's going to be incredible about the geopolitical things that are taking place as the world is being shaped to this place of the kingdom of the beast. You are not going to want to miss that conference. Go there for Pastor Brandon's conference. I'll be there. Mondo Gonzalez, John Howler, Olivier Melick, of course, Pastor Brandon, and several other world-class speakers are going to be there. It's going to be great. September 6th and 7th. God bless you guys.